$15 million. Might hang on there a minute and see what the Kennedy. The electoral vote, the all-important column. Nixon has picked up 75 electoral votes, Kennedy 148. Nixon is leading in states with 95, Kennedy leading in states with 199. If things continue in this direction, Kennedy will come out tomorrow morning with 347 total electoral votes, Nixon with 170.
Senator Kennedy and his family are tonight at Hyannisport, which is the Kennedy summer manse. Well, the summer is gone, they are there, getting the election returns. Ray Schurer is there with them, so let's go to Hyannisport now and see what's happening there. To Ray Schurer with the Kennedy Party in Hyannisport, Massachusetts.
Sitting here at Kennedy News Headquarters in Hyannis is a kind of gathering elation. Pierre Salinger, news secretary for the senator, puts it this way: the returns continue to be very encouraging from almost all over. Earlier, we had word that the senator had labeled the big Democratic sweep in Connecticut as fantastic. His sister, Mrs. Sergeant Shriver, had described him as jumping with joy. What supports all this joy are the various reports from bellwether districts across the nation which are being phoned into the Kennedy command post in Brother Robert's house next to the senator. One precinct after another is coming in strongly for Kennedy. Districts that Mr. Stevenson either carried narrowly in 1956 or that Mr. Eisenhower had won. It is too early here to claim anything, but the time is not far off when one of the senator's various political strategists will be coming here to make all this optimism a little bit more tangible. Ray Schurer, NBC News, with the Kennedy campaign in Hyannis.
Herb Klein is Vice President Nixon's press secretary, and before talking to Herb Klein, I think we ought to have one courtesy announcement. Vice President Nixon has made a couple of hundred speeches during this campaign, and Herb Klein has the laryngitis. Herb, how does the Vice President see the results the returns up to this point?
First, Herb, I ought to say that part of my job is to be the one with the hoarse voice. Seriously, he's watching the results very calmly and taking reports mainly from our own staff people. He feels that it's a little too early to tell exactly what is going to happen in this election. It'll probably be a real cliffhanger going on a long time.
Are there some of the states that have been reported so far where you are trailing in places where you thought you were going to go ahead?
I think we're trailing in some where we may still go ahead because you're getting the big city vote first, and we'll pick up a lot of votes in the upstate areas. For example, in Illinois is a good example. In New Jersey, we're doing quite well, I think.
What about Pennsylvania and Texas, South Carolina, North Carolina? These were states you thought your chances were pretty good.
Pennsylvania is a real tough one, and I think the results are yet to be known on that, although they did pile up a good majority in Philadelphia. Texas is very close. I feel confident we will win Texas. South Carolina was always one of the iffy states, which we did hope to win, but apparently we are trailing to a point where we will not now. We will win some that we had not expected to, and we'll probably drop a few. So it's, as I said, elections so far, the results are coming from the big cities in the east. We'll do better as we move west.
Herb, what's the Vice President doing now?
He's very quietly sitting in his room, analyzing the results and just being quite relaxed, as a matter of fact.
And are there other members of his family with him?
He's been talking some with Mrs. Nixon, and the girls have been sort of staying away from it. They're keeping them quiet.
When do you expect to be able to reach some definitive conclusion?
It's hard to tell in this election, Herbie. I don't think I'd want to predict.
Thank you very much. We've been talking with Herb Klein, who is Vice President Nixon's press secretary. Herb Kaplow at the Nixon headquarters at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles.
From Chicago, NBC reporter Frank Jordan reports as follows. Nobody will ever know how many votes Kennedy got in the 35th Ward, 62nd Precinct, because when they opened the voting machine and looked at the little dials in the back, the one for Kennedy read 000, some kind of mechanical failure, and the election board says there's nothing that can be done about it. There is, however, something we can do about the 501. We can go down to Lower Manhattan and see what it says. Richard Harkness is there taking care of it. Richard?
Well, gentlemen, I think that NBC and RCA can report a truly amazing electronic coup. Now, by that, I mean this. At 8:24 this evening, Eastern Time, of course, the RCA 501 computer, reported by NBC, made its first projection of what the popular vote would be when all of it was counted. The computer estimated at that time that Nixon would lose the election with 48.9% of the popular vote. Senator Kennedy would win with 51.1%. Well, now we are at about 11:20 Eastern Standard Time, and the computer shows that the projected popular vote is precisely what it projected or estimated 3 hours ago, 48.9 for the Republican, 51.1% for the Democrat, and a Kennedy victory. Gentlemen, let me tell you this, if they ever teach this machine to talk, you and I, well, we're out of business. This is Richard Harkness with the RCA 501 computer.
In 1964, we may have two machines at this desk,
You know,
kicking each other under the desk.
Rich is always a pleasant fellow, isn't he?
The one other thing about the 501, this is a statement of fact, it is the only computer on the air tonight, and there are lots of them on the air, as everyone is aware. This is the only one that has not at any time predicted Nixon would win. The others did.
Good evening again. A clear pattern is beginning to develop out of these millions of returns now coming into Election Central here in NBC Studio 8H. And it's the big city versus the rural areas. The big city returns show the pattern. Boston, Kennedy's hometown, has gone more than 3-1 for Kennedy. Philadelphia, which gave Stevenson 57% of its vote in 1956, has given Kennedy 67% this time around. St. Louis carries the pattern westward. It gave 60% of its vote to Stevenson last time. Now it's giving 67% of its vote to Kennedy. New Orleans, which gave 57% of its vote to President Eisenhower in '56, is giving 66% of its vote to Kennedy. New York, with 2/3 of its precincts reporting, gives Kennedy 63% of its votes. Stevenson got 51%. Chicago, with more than 2/3 of its precincts reporting, is giving Kennedy 67% of its votes. President Eisenhower got 51% of Chicago's votes 4 years ago. And by the way, we learned earlier this evening that an old friend, a splendid colleague, and certainly a great competitor, Ed Murrow of CBS, was taken ill with pneumonia today. We're genuinely sorry to hear it, and we hope he's back soon. David?
Here's a look. Chet has told you how the big cities have been voting. Well, here's a look at the result of both big city, rural, small town, all the voting, and the popular vote for president. We have now about 60% of the vote, and again, this is remarkably fast to have that many this early at 12:30 New York time. Nixon, 18,599,000. Kennedy, 20,191,000. Here's how it runs in the Electoral College, the electoral votes. Nixon has won or is leading in states having 191, which is not enough. Kennedy has won or is leading in states having 338, which is enough. If it continues, if it holds as it is now, Kennedy is well in the lead toward being elected the next president of the United States.
We observed a minute ago that Vice President Nixon was in the process this evening of picking up the states with the smaller electoral votes, while Senator Kennedy is capturing those states with the large electoral votes. Well, this points to the significance of the 12 key states which we picked out earlier last week with the intent of keeping track of them to see what they would do, because they represent about 60% of the total popular vote and about 52% of the Electoral College vote. So again, let's take a rundown now and see what those 12 states have done or are in the process of doing. We start in the east with Massachusetts. With 16 electoral votes, Kennedy has them. New York, 45 electoral votes, Kennedy has them. New Jersey, with 90% of the vote in, 16 electoral votes, Kennedy has them. Pennsylvania, 80% of the vote counted, 32 big electoral votes, Kennedy has them. Texas, 40% of the vote counted, 24 electoral votes, Kennedy has them.